Let's talk about the misconception out there, particularly with men who feel that if they don't have physical custody, that they won't have a say in the child's life. And sometimes mediation clears this up. But
Right.
can you explain to the
I
to
can.
the viewers out
Yeah.
there how this works?
I'm actually a mediator in DuPage in a GAL as well. And so essentially there's a couple different types of custody when you look at it. There's essentially, when you boil it down to it, there's sole custody and there's joint custody. There are variations on joint custody. Sole custody means that the non-residential parent, the parent who does not have physical possession of the kids most of the time, does not have a say-so in the upbringing of the children in just 3 areas. And that relates to education, medical, right, and religion.
Okay.
Just those 3 areas.
Just those 3.
Just those 3 areas. Now, joint custody is kind of the opposite. It means that the non-custodial parent has a say-so in those things. However, I find as the child gets older, those issues are already taken care of. All right, are you Catholic, Christian, whatever? Okay, that's
Right.
already taken care of. That's not a problem. Or a lot of times they're not doing anything. They're not.
And that relates to education too, whether it's private or public school.
Exactly right, and they're already going to, so that's kind of settled. And then when you get into medical, and I always tell people, I say, well, you know, here's the thing with medical, it really goes to elective types of things like orthodontia or things that aren't medically necessary. Because if there's an accident that happens, obviously, yeah, of course, you know, you don't need, you know, you need to get the child to the hospital or whatever, and let the other parent know immediately. So generally those things really don't, you know, it doesn't mean that you're not going to see your kids. It doesn't mean that, you know, when they're with you, you have a say-so. You know, you're able to call the day-to-day decisions when the children are in your possession for parenting time.
Right. I think in many cases, sole custody is nothing more than a power play, where one parent is trying to run roughshod over the other just to dominate, take control, and say, I got sole custody, you don't have a say. But in reality, what you just said is true. There is almost a say, or at least an understanding of this is how things are going to be.
Right. It's already been taken care of. Well,
I think it's more when you have an unhealthy parent, whether it be some sort of addiction, neglect, or the inability, mental illness. I think that's where the fight for custody, sole custody, comes into play a whole lot more.
I think it even goes into other things, because for joint custody, what needs to happen is both parents need to be mature and responsible, and they need to be able to cooperate as it relates to the decisions for their children. If they can't cooperate and they can't talk, then they're not really a candidate for joint custody. And now we're talking about, okay, who has physical custody? Because, you know, there's a lot of times when, hey, you know, people just don't see eye to eye, and people are just arguing for the sake of arguing. And, you know, when there's not that cooperation, when there's that lack of cooperation, joint custody is not appropriate. But here's something else I find too. Even when people, you know, when there is joint custody, the other parent, the non-custodial parent, generally doesn't exercise those kind of things.
Right.
And that's unfortunately the way it goes, because as I said earlier, as we talked about, those 3 areas are already taken care of.